Hello, I'm William Jamal Wright,
And I'm Hattie.
and this is our podcast, HattieJo. What are we doing? And on today's episode, we are actually going to discuss homework. So, should kids have homework? And this is actually brought about on our most recent trip to Canada.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, because I was talking to Oli.
Mm-hmm.
And Oli's in the fourth grade now, and so he was telling me about his teacher, and he was like, my teacher, she says she doesn't believe in homework, and I was like, she doesn't? Like, what do you mean she doesn't believe in homework? She's like, well, we go to school and we work for 8 hours, and like, who wants to? If you go to school and you work for 8 hours, then you shouldn't have to go home and do more work.
Are they really in school for 8 hours?
Yeah, I mean 7 to 3. It's like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
That is 8 hours, but
10,
I mean,
11,
some of it
12,
is taken up
1,
with
2,
other activities like lunch and,
4.
recess and stuff. But still,
Yeah,
they're
you're about
kids,
7
right?
hours.
Yeah.
It's like 7 and 8 hours, depending on what school you go to.
Yeah, okay. All right. Little fact check in action right
Yeah.
there.
And so it got me thinking, like, I've always been believer in homework, and I think that it's good. But it got me thinking, like, hey, like, kids do go to school all day long, and it's like a work day. Like, it's basically like a work day for us. Like, the kids are at school, they're learning, it's work. Like, it's not, I don't think any of the kids was like, oh, this is easy. Like, this is something I would choose to do with my time, which is kind of like work. Nobody's like, oh, I want to go to work. But like, we all understand it's a necessary evil. And so, like, it made me think, like, should kids have homework? And kind of rethink my position a little bit. So what do you think? Do you think kids should?
I have so many thoughts, and I'd like to preface this with having achieved the highest level of education possible. I have done a lot of homework in my life, and I feel uniquely qualified to discuss this topic.
Yeah.
And actually, this is something I've thought about in the past from coaching, just listening to kids, and things. So I have many, many, many thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you want me to just dive into all my thoughts, or if
Well,
you want
let's
to
let's
more
like
back and forth.
Yeah, let's have a little more back and forth. So what is your
So my first overarching thought is, predictably, it depends. And it depends for me.
It depends.
It depends on the age of the student. So I feel strongly, and for me, I feel strongly that kids middle school and up should have homework. And my thoughts on that part are pretty short and sweet. But my kids in elementary school, I feel like should not have homework.
Okay.
And so I'll talk about the older kids first. Maybe we can talk about that and then talk about younger kids. So my thoughts for the older kids is, so there's studies have shown, many studies, whether it's skills, for any type of skill acquisition, the thing you need to do is repetition. You need to repeat that over and over and over and over and over. Right, Winnie? You're practicing so many things over and over and over. And so for older kids, I do think it's appropriate for them to have some practice of some items. Now, how much homework? That's a whole different question, which we maybe don't need to discuss. Mm-hmm. But I think, so homework provides an opportunity for that repetition. Mm-hmm. And I think that older kids, it also provides an opportunity for learning to do, like you said, do things they don't want to do, learn their time management. Older kids often also have other activities, right? Whether that's chores at home, whether that's a sport, playing a musical instrument, but other things they need to do with their time, or they want to do with their time. Yes. And so learning that sometimes there's things I don't want to do, and maybe I'm too smart and I know how to do this and I think it's dumb. That was one of my brothers had that thought about homework, and other brothers were just not interested, right? Or it's too hard and I'm struggling and so I don't want to do it. Or there's a million different reasons you could not want to do your homework. But I think it's important, a life skill for kids to develop over time is that sometimes you have to do things you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And so for that reason alone, and in addition to the repetition, I think it's important. And I think at that age, they're more developmentally ready to learn those types of skills and to have homework that's allows for more learning outside of the classroom. Mm-hmm. But, and you might say to me, well, Hattie, don't young kids need the repetition just as much? But you're against homework for elementary school kids?
Yeah.
And I totally agree. So let me also say that I think that elementary school kids should have something they're required to do at home, but what I think that is reading. And or if there's like some fun math game, maybe they have 1 night or 2 nights a week of math. But we can talk more about my thoughts on that. But what are your before I dive into more of my many
thoughts,
while I fix the education system completely, let's
we're just fixing one aspect. Yeah. Well, so I see what you're talking about in terms of kids in like high school and middle school, like having like homework, because we're developing a life skill in that, like sometimes there are things that you have to get done,
right?
And that is a life skill. That's something that will continue to serve them for the rest of their life. Like there are things in life that you have to get done.
And sometimes it's like time management too. Like this is your assignment over winter break, right? It'll only take you 5 hours and you have so many hours over winter break, but it's up to you to determine when and how that gets done.
Yes.
Right? So like, I think there's lots of life skills. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, and I would say most people aren't getting like homework over winter break. Like nobody's getting homework over winter break. Like that's...
When I was in high school, I had lots of homework over winter break. I had homework over summer break and everything.
Are you kidding me?
No, but that's part of the IB program. I bet that was specific to IB.
Oh, yeah. Like, who's giving homework over winter break?
I had homework over every single break in high school.
Oh, my goodness.
You're like,
well, yeah, that is ridiculous. Because, like, I would not... So, I will say that there was one summer where I had, like, a summer reading program that I was expected to do this reading for, like, to come back in school and have read these books. I did not do the summer reading.
Surprise, surprise.
But it was like, I didn't have the books, so like...
Yeah, you couldn't do
the summer reading. I couldn't do the summer reading. So like, it was part of some type of like program they put me in from my like 8th grade year to freshman year. But it turns out like, if you did the reading, great, but if you didn't do the reading, like it didn't...
It's fine.
Yeah, it didn't hurt you.
Yeah. That's
and
good.
So... Yeah, that was very good because...
you didn't do the
and so we ended up... I don't think very many kids are having homework over winter breaks.
Yeah, and we're kind of getting on a tangent,
but I do feel like... I do understand that sentiment of kids need homework. And, like, I do think that it's a good life lesson for them. Ultimately, I do think that, like, all kids should have homework, but this thought of that, like, you go to school all day long, like you're in school from the early morning until midday.
Most kids it's like you wake up and go right to school, like you eat breakfast, get dressed, yada yada, but like
the majority of your day, the majority of your time awake is spent at school.
Right.
And so if those are the learning hours, why do I then have to come home and also do more work?
Right.
But I think ultimately, like, if it's a good school, and if it, like, the homework shouldn't be something that is a daunting task. It should be something that the kids are, like, able to, like, refresh on what was taught in class. And I think ultimately, like, homework kind of becomes a reflection of kind of the home life, and kind of who do they have parents that are able to support them? Are they really smart students and so they don't really need support, or are they like low achieving students that maybe need a little bit more help but don't necessarily have that home life environment to have the help that they need in order to be successful? And so I think there are a lot of like factors that go into this, but I think I ultimately agree with your assessment that like homework is good, but also I wonder if like this is kind of going on a little side tangent, but is it the responsibility of the school to teach lessons like, oh, there's some things that you have to do?
Absolutely. I think it's part of our culture, right? And so because our culture and society expects that students go to school, whether that's at a public school or whether that's homeschool or what, there is kind of an understanding that like you go to school and you come out of school with certain skills. And I do think that there's a responsibility of whoever is doing the schooling that some of those life skills like are expected to be part of it. Yeah. And so that's why I would say yes.
And so it's interesting that like you talk about like it's our culture, but like if you look at like people working, like people don't really, or I do not want to like, I have to because there are things that like I need to get done for work, but like I don't necessarily want to like work all day and then come home and have to do like a couple more hours of work.
Sure, but I feel like that's also, I mean, I have a job where that's very common and it's very annoying, but I think it's different, right? I come home, like my weekend, I know every single weekend there's going to be 6 hours of non-stuff Hattie wants to do. There's cleaning, there's the groceries, there's laundry.
But those are things that like have to be done in order for you to live your life.
Yes, exactly. But some people don't like to do them and don't want to do them and let them get backed up or don't do them. And like, I think it's that type of thing. But
that's their right. That's their choice. Like, there's no consequences for that.
Yeah, there are.
What are the consequences for not doing
your laundry? You are the smelly
laundry?
person, or like you don't have good food. You know, don't have good nutrition. Like there's all sorts of consequences, and they're self-imposed, right? Like you can make that choice.
Yeah.
Sure, there's not an external agency giving you a punishment, but there's certainly cultural like factors, and I just think that there's plenty of time. You know, you got to do your taxes. Right? Nobody wants to come home from work and do their taxes. But I do think that there's something to be said for, and I think we're also getting off topic on homework a little bit, but I do think there's plenty of times that you come home from work and it's not just, I get to do whatever I want to do. Right? Sometimes it's like, I personally don't really love cooking. I have to cook. Right? I have to do X, Y, or Z. Or, you know, I think that that's a perfectly common occurrence. And it's not that, oh, my time out of work is 100% leisure. Doing what, you know, I like to read, I like to run, I like to do crafts. And it's not that 100% of my time outside of work is doing those things. So anyway, but I mean, I do think that you have a good point of, the majority of people, adults, they go to work and when they're done, when they come home, they're done. And at least it certainly was before
I would say
internet.
that's like, I would say that's like 50-50.
Sure, but I mean, I think like before the internet, right? Like a lot of people would have to stay at work if they needed to do more work.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like you could bring your work home. So there was a much more clear cut, like I'm leaving, I'm done for the day.
Yes.
And there's still professions like policemen, doctor. Like sure, doctors and nurses have charting and stuff, but it's like, I can't doctor from my house. You know, like a surgeon has to be in the surgical suite. A policeman has to be on the clock, site, right? Yeah. Pilot has to be in the plane, like piloting. Yes. And then when they're not, you can't do it. Yeah. So I do think that there's
certain professions
and like lots of good to be said for having that mental like division of like I'm done.
Yeah.
And that the constantly trying to continue to get people to do more. I mean, I get where Oli is coming from, because that was the other thing I was going to say with my...
Well, it's not even, I think it's Oli's teacher.
Oli's teacher, but I think a lot of kids, a lot of people, like girls that I would coach gymnastics, so many of them, whether it was their own choice or their parents' choice, would be in multiple sports. And it's like, they would come to me and they'd talk about how tired they are. I'm like, you're in 8th grade. You should be getting tons of good sleep. And they're like, well, I have this sport, and then I have that sport, and then I got on my homework, and then by the time I shower, it's 11 p.m. And I'm like, you're in 8th grade and you're going to bed at 11 p.m. because your schedule is so busy. Like, and that to me, while sports are really good, and a lot of people would call those like leisure times, like where's the downtime? You know, everybody needs downtime like between activities. And sure, you could argue, oh, well, while their mom's driving them around in the car, or their dad's driving them around in the car, that's the downtime. But it's like, everybody needs time to just like peter around and like turn their brain up. Like the overscheduling, I think,
is more of an issue than the homework.
Yeah, but I also have issue with the homework. So for Winnie has issues with it too. Tell us, baby, what are your issues? Do we maybe want that other bottle? Well, I suppose I could nurse her as close as possible. They need time in their day to just play. And sure, you could argue recess, whatever, but like, I think it's important that they're able to just play at home as well. But I think there's like, and again, this is me on my high horse. I'm someone that didn't struggle in school, but I feel like you don't learn hardly anything in elementary school as far as actual academics other than reading and math. Sure, you might learn some science facts, or you might learn some interesting history, whatever, but like when you come out of elementary school, all that you really need to know is how to read and some basic math. And so I feel strongly that, and to your point about different kids have different family situations, some have more or less support at home to do their homework, some kids have more or less interest in homework, some kids have more or less aptitude. I feel like more people would be served by, I mean, there's still issues with my approach that I'm about to describe, but I think so many more people would be served with like, you just need to read. And maybe there's certain programs that like you could get the book and it reads it to you for kids that are struggling or don't have someone to help them. But like, if that's all you did, reading, find some topic. I don't care if you like to read about Michael Jordan. I don't care if you like to read fantasy. I don't care if you like to read about zoo animals. Like something that you like, so that you're more incentivized to do it and it's not a big fight. And to have at different varying levels such that you're also not feeling like I'm bad at this, this is too hard. Because I do feel like a lot of academic success is dependent not on how smart the person actually is, but how much they think they're good at it. And if you instill in a kid from a very early age, like, oh, this homework's too hard, it's a fight with my dad, I don't like to do it, like, that sets the tone for their whole education. And I feel like if you can intervene in some way to get them to even just reduce some of those feelings and to have them do something that they enjoy, then they kind of look forward to it. And, oh, my 10 minutes are up, but the chapter's not done, I'm going to read another page, right? Or like, oh, what books am I going to check out from the library next week? Like, you know, and I just feel like any skills that, no offense to you as an elementary school teacher, but like any skills that you're learning in elementary school in terms of actual stuff, I can't tell you a single thing I learned in elementary school. You know, like maybe there's one assignment that sticks out in my mind because I really enjoyed it, but coming out of there with a good reading, good writing, which I think you can do enough writing in school. And then, but I do feel differently about math. Like I do think that there's some repetition that needs to happen with math. And so I wish there was some like fun game or something that could likewise incentivize kids to be interested in it, as opposed to like, I hate this. But if there's not, I agree. What I think for homework for math in elementary school is to make it as painless as possible. So it needs to be very quick. Like a kid that is mediocre should be able to get it done in 15 minutes. I just don't think kids have the attention span, especially after what you just described, a whole day of like learning. Like they need to be able to get it done quickly. It needs nothing new. The time for stuff that's new to challenge them and like stretch grow them, that's when they're older. When they're at this young age.
Or in the classroom. Like,
or in the classroom, yes. But I mean like for homework purposes. It needs to be totally only repetition, something they should already know, maybe even easier than stuff they do in class, but like the basics, and different kids might get different, you know, it might require a little bit more individual attention from the teachers, but like something that should be a breeze.
Yeah.
And that again helps them with the, I'm good at this, you know, or like this isn't as terrible of a task. And that way, if there's less support at home, you know, maybe they get 2 out of 3 right, but they got 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
Something they can mostly do by themselves, and that grows their self-efficacy and their feelings about it, and also gives them more repetition.
Yeah.
Because I do think the repetition part is critical. I think I mentioned at the beginning of this, there are bazillion studies that no matter what skill it is, whether it's math, whether it's layups, whether it's, you know,
the skill needs to be
oration.
practiced.
Yeah, the skill needs to be practiced. And the studies also show that like practice is way more efficient if it's in short little bursts. So sure, some high level athletes might be like, okay, I'm going to work on my tennis serve for 2 hours. But the average person is way more served to be like, I'm going to spend 30 minutes working on tennis. 5 of those are going to be on serves. 5 of those are going to be on volleys. 5 of those are going to be, and doing that more consistently is 1,000 times better than if you're like, Monday I'm working on serves. Tuesday I'm working on volleys. You know what I mean? So I think that homework should be structured similarly, that instead of it trying to be like one big long chunk on one topic, instead have little bits on little foundational things that, you know, maybe rotates through, but like you keep coming back to some of those foundational things, even if it's like, oh, we learned this 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So that's kind of in the nutshell all my grand ideas, but I really, like, I cannot emphasize enough how critical, and maybe it's just because it's my PhD experience, which was the hardest educational thing of my life, that it really came down to, like, do I want to do this? But that's kind of a separate topic, but like, do I think I can? Mm-hmm. And I feel there were so many of my peers that everybody was, you know, some reasonable level of intelligence, but right, there'd be some people that I'm like, you're brilliant, you're going to win a Nobel Prize. And other people that I'd be like, I'm amazed you're doing this well. Like, this is great, right? Like, and I think that just goes to show, like, when you have grit and determination, like, you can do so many things, and you only have grit and determination about stuff that you really feel like is possible.
Yeah.
If you feel it's impossible, you're not gonna.
Yeah. So do you think that homework instills grit and determination that you can do that?
Not in the current system for too many students.
Okay.
For some students, but I feel like a higher percentage of students could come out of it with that feeling of like, I can do this.
So you think that homework can be used as a tool to instill grit and discipline, and raise their kind of self-efficacy about like themselves and what
yes. So self-esteem because they feel good about themselves, and self-efficacy as in, I feel like I can do what I set out to do. Mm-hmm. Like I have control over my destiny, the end result, if I try hard.
Okay.
And I also, I think I'm starting to say the same thing over and over, but that's, I feel very strongly about the number one factor, and I don't know exactly the proportion, but it's not like a 10% proportion, it's like a 40% plus proportion that determines whether you're going to be a good student or not, is whether you think you are. Mm-hmm. And has very little to do with if you actually are.
Yeah. Well, so I think that we've kind of come to like.
So what do you think?
I think that homework ultimately is good.
You were pro homework from the beginning.
Yeah, I was pro homework from the beginning. Kind of, sort of, from the fact that, like, first of all, I had to do homework. And so if I had to do homework, then darn it, you can do homework. So I feel like
that's when you know you're middle age, folks.
Yeah, so like I truly do, like, homework never killed nobody. Like, it's a skill, and like it's good for you. Like, it's good for you to like practice things that you've done in the classroom.
Yeah, but I also feel like homework does have an extreme potential to help kids feel bad about themselves. Like if you're struggling, and then in addition to struggling in school, like during the day, you're struggling at home, and you're not getting the support that you need, and now you're also in trouble for not getting the homework done, and it just spirals into this like, I have no control over this. I'm bad at all this.
So I don't think so.
This.
I will say that I don't think homework should be like graded for like if you got this right or wrong. So I think that homework should be like a completion grade.
Sure.
Like, oh, did you attempt to do this? Did you give a good effort to do your homework? Did you try to do the things that we did in the classroom? Because as I said earlier, I do think that homework becomes kind of a reflection of your home life.
Yes.
And so like for those, or how easy or smart how easily you're able to grasp the material.
Mm-hmm.
And so that becomes more of a reflection of the homework and not necessarily of your skills.
Sure.
And so like, while I can see like homework being something that it has a negative effect on a child, I would say that like it's kind of on the teacher to make sure that, oh, like I see this student is struggling with their homework. I'm not going to give them, they are giving a good faith effort to attempt to do their homework. I'm not going to give them an F in their homework grade because they're not getting half of their problems right.
Well, and I guess my question would be is how do you then assess they gave a good faith effort, right? I feel like so many kids would be like, I'm just going to phone this in. I've got some math problems, 5, 7, 12, 13, 12 is the answer.
Well, did you put
what I mean? Like,
did you like show your work like on the math problem? Did you like try to like, did you put random numbers and you didn't even read the question?
Mm-hmm.
Like when there was a math problem, did you like try to do what they asked you to do? Like we've cleared like all of the homework that like I've seen given like all my life, there's been something that we did in class or until I got to college. Once you get to college, they kind of expect you to
it's a different ballgame.
It's a different ballgame. But like from elementary school all the way through high school, everything you did on homework was something that was taught in the classroom and did at school.
Yes, and it should be that way. Like, and it shouldn't. Again, going back to my comment before, I feel I had a lot of homework that was what you described, but also like the next level up. Like we went over these easy topics in class. Can you make the logical extension to the next thing? Yeah. And granted, I was in a gifted program, yada yada. And so I think that's all well and good for gifted students, but I think I don't know what it was like for, just a regular program. Yeah. But I feel like it's better for increasing a kid's self-efficacy if those regular if that stuff is literally no more difficult. And maybe you did 3 levels of difficulty stuff in class, easy, medium, and hard. The homework is mostly easy with a couple medium questions, like just to get that repetition.
Yes.
But that's again just me.
Yeah, and so I think that like overall, the homework like is a reflection of what's done in class, and you can tell if a kid was able to like take what you did in class and now do that, apply it to the homework. Mm-hmm. And so if you just wrote a bunch of numbers in there because you just wanted to get done with it, then I don't believe you gave a good faith effort. Mm-hmm. And so like if you got all of them right and you didn't need to do any of the work, fine.
Lucky for you, yeah.
You clearly understand this.
Yes.
But if you just wrote a bunch of numbers down and like they have nothing to do with the problems that were given, then like you didn't give a
and
good faith
I think
effort.
Your good point, the point about showing your work is a great way to assess good faith effort.
Yes.
Because like just for an example of long division, because most people know long division, one could again BS some long division by like, I'm just going to write the sign, I'm going to write some numbers and some numbers up top, some numbers at bottom, some lines, and but like if you're going to go through that effort, you might as well write the correct numbers.
Yeah, try to start with.
Yeah. And then just out of sheer boredom, like it was so hard. Unless I guess but I also feel like there might be people that are just feeling so unable to do it. But again, then the teacher needs to design. It needs to be well designed homework, such that even the kid that hates the homework, doesn't feel like they grasp it, still feels like, okay, if I'm going to go through the motions of writing this all out, let me at least try.
Yeah. And like you can, like, as a teacher, I feel like you should be able to tell if a kid is, by looking at the paper, did they give a good faith effort? And not necessarily did they get it right or wrong. And so, like, that's, I feel like most teachers have the ability to determine if a student gave a good faith effort on their homework, whether they had help.
Well, and it'll be obvious too if in their mastery of the material later on.
Yeah.
Right? Because I do think that, to your point about not needing to get all the problems right, I do think that a lot of math for the average student is just learning the mechanics.
Yes.
Right? Okay, for this type of problem, I apply this algorithm. For that type of problem, I apply that algorithm. And just going through those steps. So if you forgot to carry a 1 or you added 4 + 7 = 12, like, it doesn't really matter. What you're trying to practice is getting the steps.
Yes.
And so I think that also helps with, kids that, because I do think part of elementary is learning to have an attention span.
Oh, without a doubt.
And so I think that a lot of mistakes are less
reading
about
the directions.
And reading the directions. That's all humans. Like, I know lots of adults that don't read the directions.
I'm one of them.
And that's just human nature, right? So I think that where I was trying to go with this, like growing that attention span and learning the algorithm and the steps is a little bit more important than did you pay enough attention to like do everything perfectly correct. And yeah, to Oli's point and Oli's teacher's point, like sometimes they're tired by that. I know I don't give my best work when I'm tired. Yeah. Right? And if I'm tired and I get home and then I'm like, oh, I have so much more to do, like that's not fun. No. And that's partly why I do feel like on the reading thing, and so many people could probably be like, well, my kid hates reading, like my kid's not interested in reading. I feel like truly that means two things. Number one, they haven't found a subject they want to learn about. And number two, they're trying to read stuff that's too challenging for the level that they're at. But I truly believe if you're able to meet them for the comprehension level that they're at and a subject they're interested in, every kid is going to like to learn about that. Like, kids like to learn about stuff. They're so curious. So maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I feel in my heart.
Yeah. So I think we land on kids need homework.
Yeah, because I said no homework for elementary school, but then I'm like, but they should read. That's kind of homework, right?
Well, and the reading thing, like, it's hard as a teacher to, like, you can't give a grade of, like...
Right, and then again, that goes with, how do I tell that you did this, right? Are you just signing off on your log that you did 10 minutes a night and really you just signed off?
Yeah. So I do, but I think we do, like, or at least I think the homework is good. I do get the thought process of that homework is kind of a reflection of our society, and that, like, sometimes you have to work all day and then bring stuff home and get that stuff done.
Or even if it's not working all day and bringing stuff home from work, it's like you work all day, you come home, and then you have other crap to do that you don't want to do. Like, that needs to get done. Like, it just needs to get done.
Yes. But I would say it's more a reflection of, like, work stuff. Because I think school is more of a, like, even if they don't have homework, like, they still have things that...
Yes. Well, and I could say there's so many things that are related to work, right? Like, I need to do my taxes, or I need to go to the bank to deposit my check, or, there's all sorts of chores associated with work that, again, might not be like you performing your actual work job, but are still necessary to do in order to show up to work the next day prepared and ready to go. Are you ready for the other side? Are you still a little hungry?
All right. So
I think we've firmly talked that one to death, but I think I'm interested that we came to the same, or not interested,
yeah, I do, like...
I would have guessed that you thought homework is, like, not necessary.
No, I think that Oli made me, like, the comments by Oli's teacher and Oli made me, like, rethink my position on it, but I still come down. I still once I think through it, I'm like, no, like homework serves more benefit than it does negatives.
Yes, and I also feel like from a student perspective, homework can be very annoying, but I also feel like for that struggling student, if some part of the grade is like the effort, right? You can't control necessarily how much you understand, how much support you have, you know, how hard things are, but you can control your effort. And so if the student feels like at least I can get a decent grade in the homework portion, right? Or the participating in class. Winnie just loves my ideas. She agrees. I feel like that helps students that are struggling.
Yeah.
Even though the homework itself might be really obnoxious to, you know, complete and do.
Yeah.
All
right.
But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I always liked doing my homework, but I generally, it wasn't until college that I started being like, ugh. Like, but again, in college, it was because some subjects I did not feel like I understood, and it was hard. And well, college also, my homework was like, I felt like in college it was like, here's what you learn in class, the level of difficulty. Here's the level of difficulty of the homework. Here's the level of difficulty of the test, and it was just like this.
Everything got
vicious.
a little bit harder.
Yeah. Yeah,
and less support as you go up. Like.
Yeah. So I think part of like in high school, I never felt like, oh, I don't know how to do this assignment.
Yeah.
It's like I just have to put in the time. And some of it was like annoying and I didn't like it, but generally.
Yeah. And for me, I felt like high school was definitely much more of a like reviewing things that were learned in class.
Yes.
And then once you get to college, I felt like because there's only so much time you have in the classroom and in a classroom setting, they're like, we don't have enough time to push you to learn all the material, so you're going to have to do some of the legwork on your own,
right?
And think about some of these topics, and
which is again other good life skills. Like sometimes you have to do that.
Yes. So part of the college experience for me was homework is a way to push you to think about things outside of in the classroom, and like there's not enough time in here for us during this, however long our classroom is, and how many times we meet a week to get everything. So you're gonna have to do some of the legwork on your own. Right.
And I think that also makes a lot of sense because college is not required for everybody. You know, it's not mandatory. Yeah. And I mean, one could make an argument school is not really mandatory, but it kind of is, right?
Oh no, you definitely go to jail if you're not.
Yeah, like, if your kid's not in school, I mean, you can choose to drop out of high school, I suppose. But you know, our society again expects. Are you ready for some more? Expects there to be.
Yeah, it's kind of like a public service. You know? Yes. Schools are a public service.
Yes. Winnie has lots of thoughts on this. Are you going to be doing homework, baby doll? Yeah? How do you feel about it? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's what we're doing.
All right. Deuces.